But so I'm kind of curious. It looks like there's 4 teams that have really separated themselves at the top of the conference, and they're playing a pretty fun brand of basketball. There's a lot of big names, NBA guys on those 4 teams, and I'm curious what you sort of see as the trickle down effect of that. Is it easier to sell kids on come play in the Pac-12 when you got guys like Lonzo Ball and Lauri Markkanen and those guys playing at the top representing the conference?
If I look back at the history of this conference from coaching in it, okay, it's always had those players in it, and we've always sold it that way. That it's if it's not the best, it's one of the top 3 every year. When you talk about the personnel and what the NBA is looking at, and there have been years, particularly back in the Westbrook, Kevin Love, Brooks, Ridnour years, where the NBA is just set on this conference, and I think so many other first-round draft picks are coming out of the conference. So it's nothing new to us. We sell it like crazy on the road that you're playing in a conference that the difference between, say, out west and the east up until the last 10 years has been the speed. We play a lot faster here. Now all of a sudden they're playing faster in the East. The game has changed from it being a physical, defensive, lock you up kind of conference. And I think the athleticism in this conference, the up-tempo style in this conference is very attractive to players. And that's why this conference continues to have that caliber, that level of player in it. And if you talk about where we need to get to, I mean, look at Utah's up-tempo game. I've told you from day one we want to be an up-tempo basketball team. Unfortunately, I had to make some adjustment because of Josh Hawkinson, Connor Clifford. That doesn't allow me to be as up-tempo as I want, but certainly want to go that direction and be one of those teams that play that fun brand of basketball that maybe down the road could attract one of those players that you're seeing at one of those other schools that would come play here.
Do those recent rule changes, have they impacted the Pac-12 differently than, say, the Big East or a conference that relies more on hand checking, or at least that's the reputation?
No, I think what we've done with the game of college basketball is try to create more freedom of movement across the board for every conference, and take away some of the physicality that takes place in the post, the bumping of cutters, hand checking out away from the bucket. You can't do that any longer because in doing that, we even recognize that from a marketing standpoint and entertainment value, there's only so much you can look at on TV. When you talk about professional football, college football, when you talk about the NBA and all that, you're struggling. Everybody's struggling for fans and fanfare. So to do that, we wanted to make sure we marketed and created a better, more entertaining brand of basketball, and very similar to what the NBA did. And in doing that, you needed to create an opportunity to score more. The scoring hadn't changed in 20 years. Made free throws, called fouls, all of that stuff were at 20-year lows if you go back 5 or 6 years, and all that's starting to change. So the whole entire country is more entertaining. Everybody's going up tempo. Everybody's scoring more because of the new rules.
Is that also, do you see that as sort of flowing upwards from the growth of year-round AAU basketball and kids playing on 3 or 4 AAU teams where they maybe don't have time to learn a slower set system?
No, it is strictly coming up from the NABC Board of Directors. In our work with the NCAA, it's strictly coming up from coaches across the country where we want to clean up the game. We want to create more scoring in the game. I think it's coming about more from where the NBA cleaned up their game, came up with more absolutes, if you want to call them, in terms of what you can and cannot do. They put in the circle to clean up crashes underneath the bucket. And when the NBA scoring went up, their scoring is even higher. You see more teams up there scoring more. It's all about creating more opportunities to score. So it's not so much centered around AAU at all. Now, what it does do, it creates an environment for what you see in AAU basketball, maybe from players scoring more, shooting more, running more, and particularly when you talk about players that are coming out of maybe a 2-year junior college program where you don't have time to do a lot of teaching. You're looking more for athleticism, speed, up-tempo, skill set that's already there, that you can get those guys up to par a lot quicker.
If you could make any rule change and it didn't have to go before a committee or anything, what would you change?
I would give the timeouts back to the coaches. in being able to call timeouts and give us that additional timeout that they took away from us back, because I think there's such a competitive nature in college basketball, and what you're finding is there's so much parity across the country, and you're finding that because of the one and done, your quote-unquote mid-major can beat a high major team. So you're finding, in my opinion, there's a lot of games that come down to the last 2 or 3 minutes, and having that extra timeout to coach possessions in the game would be better. So that was the one I would bring. Give us that timeout back, and then give the power back to the coaches to call the timeouts, and not having to wait to signal to a player to find an official to call a timeout. And part of the reason was because we wanted the game to not take so long, the game to move faster. There were too much stoppages and things like that, and the fact that that loose ball's on the floor and there's a coach over here calling a timeout. Nobody knows who has the loose ball, and he's in an official's ear. But I would like that to come back, just so we can control the game more in the last 2 to 3 minutes of the game, and having that additional timeout would be huge.
You guys have played some really good teams since the last time you played Utah. Your bench has gotten a little deeper. Things have changed a bit. Is that a measuring stick game for you?
I think a couple things. Number one, I've got to trust my bench more. It's deeper, but I've got to play it more, and they're starting to produce. Robert Franks, Viante Daniels, Jeff Pollard certainly as well too. The measuring stick for us, I think we're playing better basketball now, having played some of those other teams. And Utah they were just superb when they came in here and played us. Ike had a bug and was out of whack and everything else. So the measuring stick becomes, are they that much better in terms of the performance we gave here? We need to give them a better game, and I'm hoping that we're able to do that.
Pollard has expected more of himself in these opportunities he's been given the last couple of weeks. How do you feel about his expanded minutes and how he's used them?
You know, he is a terrific young man, and his character is starting to show up in his play. He got knocked out of whack with having mono and having to sit for 2.5, 3 weeks, and the conditioning left his body. He lost weight, he lost his sharpness, he lost some confidence. All of that's starting to come back now, and I think people can see he has a certain swagger to himself out on the floor. He's very confident. He gives you everything in his tank, works extremely hard, and I think he's one of those players that can really help us as we come down the stretch when you talk about getting more minutes off your bench, because he can go in and really defend an opposing team's big man, just in terms of keeping the ball out of their hands. He's a better runner getting up and down the floor than, say, a Connor. He can finish. He can do some things. So I think the more opportunities he gets to play, the more growth you're going to have out of him as well.
It's always a battle between you and Colorado. Are you expecting more of the same?
I wouldn't expect anything any differently. We match up well. It'll be on their home floor. Their students, they got an incredible home court advantage sitting there that we're going to have to contend with and everything else. So this trip for us is just about handling ourselves in 2 tough environments to play, having that poise, having that competitive nature, and then coming out of the trips feeling like you either performed up to your level or better than, which forces you to grow as we head down to this homestand that's coming up next week with the Arizona schools and the seniors' last game coming quickly, and Pac-12 conference tournament coming up quickly. We want to continue to get better, improve better, play better, or maintain. We certainly don't want to go back the other way.